Okay, my name is Dennis Gill with the Americans in Wartime Experience. Today's date is 7 October 2022, and I am in Arlington, Virginia at the Military Women's Memorial, and I've got the pleasure of speaking with Giada Bleeker.
That is correct.
Perfect. Giada, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself. Where were you born? Where did you grow up, go to school, that kind of thing?
I was born and raised in Flagstaff, Arizona, northern Arizona, and I lived there all of my high school, middle school, elementary school, and my dad was actually in the Marine Reserves at that point in time with the bulk fuel unit in Phoenix, Arizona. So I experienced him going on deployments throughout my childhood, but overall, I don't know if you've ever been to Flagstaff, but it's a pretty magical place. It was a really great place to grow up.
Yeah. Why did you decide to join the military?
So after I graduated high school, I had every intention of going to college, and I did. I went to the University of Arizona in Tucson, and I went there for about a semester and just didn't feel like I was being challenged, and it just wasn't what I needed at that point in my life. So, one day it was just kind of on a whim. I was walking down the street and saw the recruiter office and walked in, and because my dad was a Marine, I was indoctrinated from a very young age that Marines were the best, so that was the only recruiter that I spoke with. And pretty much that day, took the ASVAB, began the process and all of that good stuff. My dad was deployed at the time in Iraq. It was 2008, yeah. And so I didn't really get to communicate with him at that time about what I was doing. So once we did get a hold of him, and I told my mom and my sisters, my dad's first thing was like, what's your MOS? Like, don't join the Air Force. Like, don't join the Marines because the Air Force gets treated better. But I kind of told him already that I had begun the process. Marines was the one for me. I wanted to be, the best, obviously. Right. So that's what I did. And he was glad that my MOS was a cryptologic linguist, which he didn't know a lot about, but he was like, that sounds like a solid, job choice in the military. So.
What did your father do?
So he started out as a combat engineer when he was active duty, and he did that for, I'm not entirely sure how many years. And then he left the Marines and then re-enlisted in the reserves. Okay. And then he went into the bulk fuel unit. And so he did bulk fuel and then kind of picked up first sergeant and sergeant major and kind of just held those billets or MOSs.
Okay. Any other family members that were military?
Yes, I have a lot. My dad's dad was in the Army, and he served in World War II in the South Asian area. And then two of my uncles on my mom's side, as well as some cousins. Yeah, okay. So quite a few military people in my family, for sure.
Did you have any idea what it is you wanted to do in the Marine Corps?
I did not, no. I went in as an open book, and I fell for the recruiter thing of, okay, what do you want? Adventure, money, travel the world, and I ate it all up as an 18-year-old. And then they were like, okay, bulk fuel, or not bulk fuel, what did they say? Motor T. They were like, that one could be really good because you could go lots of places. And I was like, maybe. But then once I took my ASVAB, and they were like, hey, you're relatively smart, smarter than your average Marine. So then they requested that I take the language aptitude test, and I passed that to go to the Language Institute.
Okay.
Yeah.
Enlisted?
Yes.
So you were West Coast Marine?
Well, no, at that point in time, all females went to Paris Island.
Okay.
Yeah, so 4th Battalion, until recently, was all just in Paris Island. So no, I was not a Hollywood Marine. I was a real Marine.
Gotcha. How long so you graduate basic, how long is the training?
3 months, and then, so then after I graduate basic, then you go to combat, it's been a while. Some sort of combat training for another additional month, and then I got sent to Monterey, California, and depending on which language you're in, you're there anywhere between 6 months to over a year. Okay. So when I first got my orders, it just said I was going to be a Korean linguist. So I went there all excited to learn Korean and things like that. But then it ended up changing. The needs of the military changed because we were in an active war. And so I remember the gunny came in and called my name and was like, Lance Corporal Witt, you're learning Pashto. And I was like, where is that? I don't even know where that is. Is that a country or just a language? So I was put in the Pashto program, which at that point in time was 47 weeks, so a little bit less than a year, with a new curriculum, a new everything for the Pashto program. I think I was maybe the third or fourth class to go through that program at the time.
What is the job of a linguist in the military?
So all linguists are cryptologic linguists, which means on top of learning a language, we learn cryptology, sort of like SIGINT type things. So data collection, voice analysis, and on top of actually translating. So most military linguists work in an office or doing some sort of collection and then translation, and not a lot of face-to-face translation, like an interpreter. It's like a linguist, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
So eventually you make your way to Afghanistan, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Let's rewind to September 11, 2001.
Okay.
Right. Do you remember that day?
I do, yes.
What were your thoughts?
I was in 7th grade in Flagstaff, Arizona, and due to the time difference, it was really, really early in the morning. And it had already happened. So I just remember waking up that day, and my parents would always have the radio on. I just remember my parents being in shock and just listening to the radio about this like crazy chaotic thing, and then going to school, and still that was all everybody could talk about at school. It was a huge event, and I didn't really feel anything at the time. I just knew that it was a really big deal, just because I think I was so young. It was just like, whoa, what is this? What's happening? And just it was took a long time to process, I think, maybe, especially because I wasn't directly affected by any of it, because we were on the other coast. I didn't really know anyone in that area. But I know that I was sad, and it was scary. Definitely, there was a lot of like scariness happening at school, of everyone being like, "Oh, we need to panic. The world is ending. We're under direct threat." And it's like, where's next? Who knows? And so it didn't really affect me until my dad deployed, I believe later in 2001, maybe 2002. And that was when it was like, okay, this is crazy. Yeah.
Some of the people I talked to that are your age, so they were younger when that day happened, they couldn't process it because of the age.
Mm-hmm.
You said you were in 7th grade.
Yeah.
So you really can't process the magnitude of that. But what they do say is that they remember distinctly the reactions of their parents and other adults.
Mm-hmm.
That really stuck with them.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Like I said, I remember my parents just kind of, I want to say that memory is like in slow motion almost, that morning of like coming down the stairs. I was going to go eat breakfast, and my mom's just like frozen. My dad's frozen, So yeah, it was just this incomprehensible thing, really, for them and for me.
Right.
Yeah.
So you finish your training, and at some point you deploy to Afghanistan.
Correct.
What year is that?
2010.
Okay.
So a crazy thing for me as a linguist, the military had no linguists, no Pashto, Dari, Farsi linguists. Like I said, I was the third or fourth class to graduate from the Language Institute, and they had a lot of local nationals that they were utilizing, but even then they didn't have enough linguists. So I was 47 weeks in Monterey. I completed my training, graduated from the course, and then I spent about another 6 months in Goodfellow Air Force Base in Texas doing my cryptologic training and all of that. So that put me, I think I graduated from there in December of 2009, and then I deployed in February of 2010. So I didn't get a workup. I didn't do any training. I hadn't touched a weapon in like a year almost. I arrive at 1st Radio Battalion in Camp Pendleton, California. And even when I was in Goodfellow, my battalion was contacting saying, what size boots do you wear? What size camis do you wear? Because, you're coming here and you're leaving. So we didn't get a workup. We didn't know anybody that we were working with. It was myself and a few other linguists, just because they were pushing us through the pipeline, because they needed us. And it was just crazy to just be thrown, they're like, okay, here's a weapon. I'm like, oh God, I don't know how to use this anymore. I totally forgot. And so, so to February 2010, we deployed to Helmand province in southern Afghanistan. At Camp Leatherneck was kind of like our base there, for 1st Radio Battalion. And at that point in time, it was very small. There was one chow hall, a PX, which, didn't sell anything. It was like a little cardboard hut. Right. It was so tiny. There was not a whole lot there. The MWR was very small. You had to wait, an hour for the phones. You had to wait an hour for the computers, and then you had like a time limit. And so, it was just very, it was a whirlwind for that first deployment, just because it was so fast, no workups, and we just didn't know. We were fresh out of school and we didn't even know what we would be doing. And then they were like, okay, we're going to throw you into this OCAC and this operational setting. And we were just, these babies that fresh out and just terrified, really.
What are your first impressions when you get there?
We were excited, we were very excited and we were just ready and raring to go. But again, we just didn't know what we would be even doing, whether we would be doing face-to-face translations because they needed that, or if we would kind of be in a more, like the top secret OCAC side of things, of collection and things like that. So we were just open and ready and like fresh-faced, and the really interesting thing, especially as Marines, like usually, and a female in particular, whenever you see, you arrive somewhere new, everyone's like, oh, get out of here, and just kind of like, you have to like warm your way into getting accepted into everything. But as linguists, everyone was like, you're here, we've been waiting for you, you need to do this, what do you need to be? And it was kind of unique because a lot of times as a linguist, especially a posture linguist at that point in time, they wanted us to be good linguists more so than like good Marines, which is very reverse for most Marines, where it's you're a Marine first and your job second. But for us, they were like, no, we really need you to be like good at linguisticking, we were just very excited and eager, very eager, definitely.
So what did you end up doing?
So I started out in the OCAC, which is kind of like a mission control command, where we would be collecting on the enemy, translating enemy communications, and then sending it out to our teams, and just like a support for everybody on the ground. Really, we would develop targets, listen to their lifestyle, see what they were planning, and all of that stuff. So I did that for maybe 2 months, and then that was when the female engagement team kind of got set up, and that they reached out to us because they were like, we have no linguists that are women that are willing to do this, or they were just really desperate for linguists, so they reached out to us because they knew that 1st Radio Battalion had linguists. And they ended up sending me out on the female engagement team like about 2 months into my deployment.
So explain what that is.
So a female engagement team is the predecessor to CST, and I guess it kind of followed the Lioness program that the Marines had set up in Iraq, where it was this kind of cultural support accessing, the female populations of the areas that we're serving in. So in Iraq, mostly what the Lionesses did was like searching females and questioning females and things like that. The female engagement team was to do that, but kind of on an elevated level and more of like the hearts and minds type thing. So the unit that I got assigned to was in Nowzad, which is still in Helmand. And Nowzad that was one of the first places that the British Royal Marines had gone into in around 2008, 2009. So there'd been a heavy presence there for a while. So there was good security in that area. So the female engagement team was actually able to do more than just searching females at ECPs and things like that. So we were attached with a civil affairs unit. And so we got to really engage with the population and the women and the children, and really build these connections with, midwives, or we created like a weekly women's meeting where they could all come together and talk, and come up with ideas of how to build up their community that had been destroyed. And eventually in that area, we were able to build like a women's bazaar, it was like a small section of the actual bazaar that was run by women, and that women could come and shop in safely, and comfortably. So we made a lot of good progress, and it was a lot of fun to like get to do that, that type of engagement. Yeah.
So you're not going out on operations where you're gathering intel, or
with this first one, no.
The first one.
Yeah. So with this one in Nowzad, no, we were not. We weren't. I mean, it was asked of us by, I think we were 1st Battalion, 5th Marines, the infantry unit that was there. Of course, they asked us, hey, if you hear anything, those women are talking. If you hear anything, keep your ears open, let us know. Like, that's part of the female engagement team, but definitely wasn't our entire mission. The mission was more so the hearts and mind aspect of, rebuilding kind of. Yeah.
Okay. Any special training for that?
Again, I was on I think the first round of female engagement teams, and they had set them up in country at that point in time. So yeah, we were on Camp Leatherneck, and it was myself and the 2 other linguists that Radbin had handed over for a short while. And the training was, okay, here, wear a full combat load, let's do an obstacle course, and then, shoot at the range.
Right.
And that was it. Have tea, be nice, like, I don't know, be on alert, but, don't make people feel uncomfortable. Like, there was a very small aspect of, like, a very small cultural aspect that we were given. And that was maybe a day's worth of training.
You're making this up as you go.
Yes.
Figuring out as you go.
Yes, we were. And that was all the female engagement teams at that point in time. But in the rear, they had set up like an actual female engagement team where they got about 6 months of training, a little bit of language, culture, and then of course, like combat, more kinetic type training. So I was just out there winging it. But as a linguist, I kind of was like side saddling. And I was a lance corporal, so I was side saddling some sergeants and things like that, and serving a little bit more as a linguist, more so than an actual female engagement team. But it's kind of cool because I could jump between both. Yeah.
Is just Marine Corps that was doing this, or was it?
Yes. Just Marine Corps were the only boots on ground. I think maybe some Air Force, but it was a pretty small presence. It was mostly just Marines at that time. Yeah.
Anything that stands out from your first deployment? Good, bad, indifferent?
It was one of like the best times of my life. And I still have those relationships with the grunts, the infantry, with the civil affairs folks, and with the other, random females that all came together to form the female engagement teams. And just being able to connect with those, it was just really human interactions with, totally different cultures to me and everybody. And even just those genuine human interactions of these women who were just so excited to see other women. And it was kind of like this spark of hope, I guess, of, wow, there's like progress for good being made. Like, it's not all just death and destruction. Like, there is this aspect of people who do care about us and care about, the long-term results of everything that's happening. So it was a really special time for me, for sure. And definitely just one of the best times of my life. Definitely.
Yeah. So how long were you there the first deployment?
So I had actually volunteered to stay for a full year on that deployment because they needed people.
Right.
So half of my unit, so I did the female engagement team in Nowzad for about 5 months, and then I went back to the OCAC at Leatherneck for a couple more months, and then around October to December, I was working in Sangin with a different unit, and with that one, we set up some like medical stands, and we would do, because Sangin was super kinetic. It was very different than Nowzad, where there was security, calm. Sangin was very kinetic, but there was, again, that female aspect that we wanted to tap into. So that was late 2010 that I was in Sangin. And what we did there was, obviously, with the troops, the grunts that were there, we would serve as, searching and whatever when they would do kind of like clearing operations or patrols and things like that. But we also had medics that really wanted to help the females in that area, especially because it was just so dark. Like, I don't know, there was nothing else. Like, it was kind of a scary place, and we knew that there were people that needed medical attention for various reasons. So we had a female doc with us, and then we had a female like midwife, an Afghan midwife, that we kind of had like commandeered to be with our team. And sometimes we would try and go like out to a central location and have security and say, hey, we're going to have a medical clinic over here. If any females can leave their house or whatever and get over here to see the midwife and any doctor that they need to, because a lot of times they were deprived of medical care because their husband was like, you can't leave the house. Yeah. So we were like, well, if we go to them, maybe we can help with that a little bit more. Or sometimes we would have like pop-up clinics and things like that at the base, like outside the base a little bit, but no one would come. So that was when we kind of like started kind of moving out to try and get to them. And we saw quite a few women, but I think the company commander kind of decided it was a little bit too risky. So then we stayed a little bit closer to base and just stuck with like the patrols once that kind of got kinked. Yeah.
And this is all the first deployment?
Yeah.
So the second deployment is when?
2012. So I went back, got back home in January of 2011, and then December of 2011, we got there on New Year's, I remember. So yeah, January 1st, we landed back in Helmand for my second deployment.
And female engagement team still?
No, this time I didn't. I was just stuck in the OCAC this time. Okay. So just doing more of a support role, translating enemy comms, developing targets, things like that. Yeah.
Anything significant changed between first and second deployment?
The base grew significantly. Right. There were so many more people there. Like, it was huge. And they built so many huge, like, fancy buildings. And it looked almost like they were trying to build that base up to be like a permanent presence, because they were like putting streetlights and roads and all kinds of stuff. It was a huge base, especially compared to 2010. Just huge changes on the base. And then, like engagement wise, whether it be, grunts or female engagement teams, things like that, like fighting wise, op tempo was definitely slower. Things were still popping off, but it was definitely slower for sure. Yeah.
How about your third deployment?
My third deployment, that one was the last one. I did deploy as a contractor.
Okay.
In 2016 till 2021, but that was just like as a civilian contractor.
Doing?
I was a linguist, and in 2016 I actually, small world, I actually ended up working with the CSTs and the Katejas as like a translator for them and the ODAs. So it was a really cool position to be in, from female engagement team to an interpreter, to like doing night strikes and translating for these female Afghans that were just doing awesome work, and the ODAs were doing awesome training, and I think it was 2013, we had switched from Enduring Freedom to Resolute Support. So that was a huge change, seeing, kind of the beginnings of everything, where we were actually actively fighting, to a training role. So that was really cool to see basically the entirety of the Afghan military being set up and training them, and seeing all of that, and kind of getting to be a part of that as well was really, really cool.
And you were an interpreter going out with the CSTs.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah.
And the FTAs as well.
What's an FTA?
The FTPs.
FTPs, yes. FTPs. Yes. So actually, at that point in time in Kandahar, where we didn't have, the CSTs were all in Kabul, and they were doing training with any of the CSTs up in that area. But I think around 2016, they had switched to a less operational role and more of a training role, obviously. Yeah. So it was really just the FTPs on their own. The CSTs were in Kabul, just kind of advising from up there. So it was interesting to kind of, they thought I was a CST, and I was like, no, I never got any training again. And so that was really different, to go out on patrols without a weapon or anything as a civilian. Yeah. It was very, definitely a change, but also really cool, and one of the best times of my life as well.
Well, tell us about those women that did that, the CSTs.
The CSTs or the FTPs?
The CSTs.
CSTs, okay. Well, I didn't engage with too many CSTs. Okay. I actually got, it's really cool how we've gone full circle. Right. But I got in contact with the CSTs through Pashtana Durrani. I had kind of reached out to her, and I'm kind of more associated with Learn. I don't know if anyone's talked to you about that yet. Okay, so Learn is like an NGO that's partnered with All True and the CST community and the FTPs and things like that. And so through my organization, Learn, and All True, I kind of got connected with all of these CSTs who, have the similar background, know all of these FTPs, and I'm like, hey, I know them too. I worked with them down south, but they were all up in Kabul, so I never really got to meet the CSTs until just recently. But I knew of them. I just, unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to go up to Scorpion in Kabul to actually interact with them or meet with them. But it was kind of this like back and forth of sometimes I had this like I had my cell phone and then my night vision, and I kind of doubled as like combat photographer and interpreter for the ODAs. And so, they had contacted me, or like, hey, do you have any pictures, for our our after actions and things like that, our storyboards? You have any of the girls on target? And I was like, actually, I do. Like, I love doing that. I have tons of pictures. And so I really only interacted with them via email of like, hey, these chicks are doing awesome, and kind of advised on, hey, this is a little weak. This could use some help, Right. Mostly the language, because most of them are Dari speakers, and all the operations in the South, they would be, tactically questioning Pashto speakers. And so they would kind of hit a wall in that aspect. But in that same regard, I was happy to be there to kind of gap that bridge.
Right.
Yeah.
So you didn't work the CSTs very much, but you did work the FTP.
Yes, I did.
Tell us about those ladies. It seems like they took a ginormous risk.
They did, yes.
And still taking a risk.
Absolutely. I have nothing but respect for them, and I adore them. Like, not only are they just like badass little women, because I'm very tall and they're all very short. Right. But they were just, I remember the first time that I went on mission with them, and there was one girl, her name was Khadija, and she just looked so cool. Like, from the moment I saw her, I was like, she's so cool. And the birds had landed, and they landed really close. And I remember, like, I got knocked back. One of the other FTPs got knocked back. But she just stood there, like, so stoic, like, unmoved by this wind. And I was like, these girls are amazing. So it was just so cool to meet them, know them, hear their stories. I believe Khadija, she told her dad that she was going to school, which now seems really like also a scary thing to say. But at that point in time, it was like, oh, okay, she's going to school. That's why she's not home. Just because she was scared to tell her dad that she was like a soldier. And so just the lengths that they went to do this thing that they really cared about was just incredible.
Yeah. Several of them that I spoke to would tell me that their families had no idea.
Right.
They
Yes.
had to hide it. Make something up.
Yes. Right. Which is just crazy.
Yeah.
But just like I said, incredible that they had that drive so much because family in their culture is a huge thing. You don't lie to your family. You tell them, it's a big community, and you tell your family everything. You help each other with everything. And so to kind of like just telling a lie kind of breaks the barriers in and of itself, let alone one that big.
Right. So you went back for the third time. You were a civilian contractor.
Correct.
At that point, and you worked for which organization?
Mission Essential.
Mission Essential. And what is their job over what services were they providing in Afghanistan?
So primarily they had the biggest and longest contract of linguists. They supplied so many linguists, even since 2010. Like we had some civilian Cat 3 linguists that we worked with that were also employed by Mission Essential.
Right. So they did essentially what you were doing.
Yes.
As a Marine.
But making a lot more money, a lot more money, especially at that time,
Right. Why did you decide to go back a third time, this time as a civilian?
That's a good question. Yeah, I really don't know. I just felt drawn to go back. And it was a toss-up of what assignment I would get. Like, it wasn't guaranteed that I would end up, with the CSTs or the ODA or where I could end up doing God knows what. So, if I was stuck at like a ECP, just, telling people to put their hands up and things like that, I don't think I would have enjoyed it. I might have left, but I was really lucky. And for whatever reason, the universe, drew me to go, and I did, and it was wonderful. Yeah.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay.
Give me 10 minutes.
I'm almost done.
Okay.
Yeah, 10 more minutes, I promise.
Okay.
So, tell me about the Afghan people. Your interactions with them.
Of course, yeah. I love them. It's a huge, huge part of my life that I never would have expected. Because even to this day, I am a resettlement case manager, and we have so many clients that are being resettled from August 2021, and I adore all of them. They're a really unique, hospitable, loving people. And one of the things that I like to tell people about, particularly what I do right now, because I have a lot of friends from the military and things like that who they were like, I never want to speak Pashto again. I never want to think about Afghanistan again,
Yeah.
But it's like, I don't know, it's just a huge part of my life and a huge pivotal moment in my life. And I'm sure it was due to the fact that I studied the language and the culture and all of that for so long. It's just a special place, and I think it's a beautiful place, and there's beautiful people. And I love the humanity of like treating people as humans and just seeing an Afghan and interacting with them as a human, which I was sometimes deprived of working in some operational settings where, no, you assume everyone's a bad person, So you go in saying, thinking, okay, who's bad? This person's bad. Oh, So now and even with the FTPs and with FET, and now as a resettlement case manager, I really love not assuming everyone's bad and getting to realize like how incredible all of these people are. Like, to go from, all Afghans are, terrorists or whatever, to hearing their actual stories, and I'm like, wow, you're incredible, you're amazing, and the fact that you're here and and just kind of letting them know that they're incredible too is also really rewarding and fun. And I've loved getting to know about Afghanistan's history and the culture. And I don't know if you know anything about the history of Afghanistan, but it's so tumultuous and like incredible. I've said that a lot now. Okay. But it is. Yeah. It's fascinating, and just the fight that is in these people is like inspiring for sure.
Yeah. And you do what you say you were relocation
resettlement.
Yeah. Caseworker now.
Yes.
What does that mean? What are you doing?
So we asylum seekers and refugees that are granted status here in the United States come to our agency, and we provide them with financial and other services to help them become productive members of society as they resettle here in the United States.
Not just from Afghanistan,
but that has been a really big client base recently. Yeah.
For obvious reasons.
Yes.
So looking back on your time in Afghanistan, how do you think that your combat experience has shaped who you are now?
Ooh, interesting question.
Delve too deep into it. It changes everybody.
Of course it does. Yeah, definitely. And I appreciate it because of course it's had an effect on me. And I think for me, I think it's having experienced it helps me to better understand where other people are coming from that have also experienced it. Mm-hmm. Because, you know, secondhand trauma of just hearing about it, it's one thing, but to actually really firsthand understand what it's like and what they've gone through. I don't know. I think it really helps me to connect with people on a really personal level, and helps me to be a more like caring and understanding person too, especially in the field that I'm in and the people that I interact with. Right. It's a huge part of me.
Yeah. Last question, I promise.
Okay.
Let's fast forward 100 years.
Oh, okay.
We're recording these stories because we want to preserve your experiences, preserve your story for future generations. Mm-hmm. What message would you like to send someone that might see this? Whether your family member or just a random person that comes across it on whatever replaces the internet.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh gosh. That's a scary thought. What would 100 years from now? I don't know. I think my biggest message and thing that I like to promote as a human is just treating other people as other humans, and like down to the very base of everything, we're all the same, and that kindness can go so far. Just empathy and kindness and just humanity in general, treating others the way you want to be treated. It really makes a difference. Like what you put out comes back to you. Right. And so to be kind and to be, understanding and take it slow with other people, because it really makes a difference. And, that one interaction where you're kind can have such a huge effect. That ripple effect throughout time and everything, lives, generations, everything. It really does make a difference. And I think that that's super important that we don't think about enough.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, on behalf of the Americans in Wartime Experience, thank you.
Thank you.
Sitting down and talking to us.
Yes, it was a pleasure.
I'm sorry for the cliche, but I want to thank you for your service, because it does matter. People do care about it, and that's why we're doing these, because your story is important.
Thank you for collecting these stories. This is important too. Thank you so much.